Now, joining me on stage right now are two people who are going to be talking about diversity and inclusion. And first off, I'd like to welcome to the stage Vicky Sleight, who's TM Forum's VP of Diversity and Inclusion and Human Factor. Vicky, welcome to the stage. Thank you. And joining us on stage, we have Keri Gilder, who is the CEO of Colt. Welcome, Keri. Thank you. Please take a seat.
Thank you.
And by the way, if you see us drinking from these cans, these are actually water. I'll just make that clear now, or at least they used to be water. Okay, now Keri and Vicky are here today to share some insights on diversity and inclusion, and specifically the Inclusion and Diversity Score, or IDS, initiative. One second, there we go, went a bit 1980s there. To begin, Keri, can you tell us about Colt, for anyone who's not familiar with the organisation, and what it is exactly you guys do?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Colt is a technology company that specializes in data and voice services. We do business in about 34 countries around the world, and we're known as kind of the international incumbent for telecommunications. So that means we connect 29,000 buildings with our fiber infrastructure and 900 data centers. So we're the cloud leader in cloud connectivity.
Okay, and Vicky, TM Forum.
Yeah, so TM Forum, so we are a global alliance of around 850 plus companies, and our focus is around digital transformation. And we are basically change agents working collaboratively and together to reduce the technology barriers, bringing together, whether it's consultants, the digital technology companies, technology suppliers, across a number of things. My focus really, one of our key themes around that and within digital transformation is the human factor. Which covers digital organisation, transformation and culture, and obviously on behalf of the industry, the D&I, Diversity and Inclusion Council.
Okay, so for anyone who isn't familiar with IDS, can you tell us what it is and what's the thinking behind it?
I think when it comes to the thinking behind it, it's probably a good place to start is why do we even have the IDS, which is the Inclusion and Diversity Score. So what TM Forum did almost 2 years ago now was we gathered together some thought leaders from across some of the large companies, including the likes of Colt, Deutsche Telekom, BT, Verizon, Accenture, to name just a few. And we wanted to look at, okay, how do we kind of accelerate digital transformation and innovation through diversity and inclusion? So we formed what we call the Diversity and Inclusion Council, of which Keri is our chair. And we now have a mission to transform the tech communications industry to make it the most diverse, inclusive, and equal industry in the world. Because right now, where we sit, we are nowhere near that. And I think if we look at, while most executives, and in fact the stat is 90% of executives understand the importance of equality, diversity, and inclusion. When we look at the top 100 benchmarks for organizations, only 7 telcos are actually in those top 100 benchmarks, which is not good enough when we look at diversity and inclusion. And if you think about, what we thought we needed to do, this has to be measured. To understand how to progress, then we need scientific measurements. Otherwise, we don't know where we are in the first place. So to make meaningful change happen, not only requires commitment and commitment from the top, but it also requires these measurements as well. So that's when we kind of got together, and we don't want to be another kind of coffee and biscuits or networking groups, the work that the networking groups do is amazing and it's needed. But what we want to do and what we are doing is building the tools for the industry that can hopefully then go beyond our industry as well to make real change happen. And that's what we are all about alongside with our other members and obviously with Keri as chair.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it there, but Keri, why do we actually need this? Why do we need this IDS?
Well, I think there's a couple reasons why we need it. I mean, first and foremost, Vicky just gave some of the statistics. I'll give you a few more. There was a study done in telecommunications, and of 31 companies globally, only 5 had female CEOs, which I'm one of. Out of 330 top management, only 60 were actually females, and of those 60, 20 were in HR, which is a very traditional field. So if you look across the industry, and that's just telecommunications, that's not tech, but tech has similar statistics. So when you look across that gamut, what you see is a severe lack of diversity. We all know that the next war is the war on talent. And so if we want to attract, if we want to retain, if we want to develop talent, then we have to consider diverse candidates as a part of that equation. And I'll even take it one step further. As a CEO, I look at metrics every day. I manage metrics, I manage KPIs, I manage P&Ls, I understand what budgets look like. When was the last time you saw a dashboard on DE&I in your company? You probably didn't, or if you did, it was on how your employee resource groups are doing. We have to start managing this as a statistic that is strategic to our business. And if we do, what we'll see is that the 2 top characteristics that we need in our companies going forward, innovation and resilience, will come to us, and we will actually enable a more profitable environment for all of our companies to succeed.
Okay, so to make that happen, what needs to be done?
Well, first, we have to focus on the science and the statistic. We need the metric to be into place, and that's what Vicky and I have been working on with help from Bain and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council within the TM Forum. We decided, and I told Vicky I'm not joining another networking group. I love them, and I will support them, and I'll provide mentorship and coaching. But unless we're actually going to do something that is going to institute real change, I'm not interested. That's when we came up with the idea around this benchmark. We use Net Promoter Score in our industry as a benchmark for customer experience. We need the same type of benchmark across the industry in order to measure inclusion and diversity. And that's what the development of this score does. It's simple, it's adaptable because we know that this environment is going to change over time. It's future looking. We're not going to start complaining about the sins of the past. We're going to look to the future and start developing a benchmark that we can all use across the industry to understand where we are and understand how we can progress, and then use the help of the TM Forum in order to drive the interventions that are necessary across our employee resource groups, but across also the 850 members that the TM Forum has.
And I think also, just to add to that, Keri, if you look at, so, there's 2 parts, right? There's 2 parts to the score. So one measures from the HR system, so the demographics. That's measuring your diversity. And then the other part of it is measuring and getting the human sentiment from your employees as to how included they actually feel. Because you can have as diverse a board or one step down as you like, but if your employees are not feeling included, although you might have attracted them in the first place, you're not going to retain them, and you're not going to attract others. So that's what we're measuring, and we're not just giving back a score. We're actually looking to give back a lot more detail around, and some of that verbatim from some of the feedback from the employees on a global level. And as Keri said, it's adaptable. So we're not looking to penalize those who are not doing so well. This is about helping and supporting them. And as Keri said, the interventions are going to be key. What I said earlier was that we want to make this industry, facilitate this industry, make real change happen and make it the most diverse. So we have to get those best practices, those interventions, so that when you get your score back as an organisation, that you've got something to work with, and we can start to see that progression. So that's kind of what we mean by the science behind it as well.
And I'll just add one more thing. Although gender is the easiest to measure and it's one of the most primary diversity groups, the score actually includes 5 diversity groups in it. So it's not just gender, it actually is disability, it is looking at LGBTQ+, it is looking at many of the other factors, the 5 major diverse groups that are out there to ensure that we're actually driving this as a holistic score and not just around gender.
Okay, so when you talk about that and you talk about the score and you have those different factors to consider, is there like equal weighting to all of those factors, or do you weight it more towards gender, for instance?
No, there's equal factor. There's an equal weighting to each one of the diverse. So the diversity elements, we pull out of the HR business tools.
Yeah.
The challenge we have is actually pulling that data out of the tools, because your employees outside of gender will have to actually agree to allow you to have that data. And so that's not as easy to pull that. So for a while, gender will probably be a little bit more weighted just because the data is there. But over time, our hope is that people will be comfortable that we're using it to actually help them rather than using it, as a negative against them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so how are you actually going to make this happen?
So right now, what we're aiming to do, well, what we are already doing actually is pulling the industry together, and not just from, one of the challenges that we've got is what we call the knowledge action gap. And although, and I mentioned this earlier, executives understand the problem, a lot of the time the execution is left with the CHRO. And that's not to say that the CHROs and their HR teams are not doing a good job, but actually this needs to be given the global focus and attention that it needs from the top level, from CEO level. So what we're doing, what needs to happen is that the industry gets together, but not just that, we're pulling together a CEO advisory board as well, of which Keri will be leading, and our CEO, Nick Willits from TM Forum. And that will help us to drive this. So being part of that means that you run the IDS score through your organisation. The plan for us as TM Forum, and this is something that we do, is to make this an industry standard, so that across the piece, it's standardized. And we're already talking to some of the CEOs. And interestingly, because Keri talked about, the talent earlier, that's, some of the CEOs have recognized the fact that actually, I don't necessarily just want to benchmark where I am on diversity and inclusion against other telco operators in my region, other tech companies in my region or globally. I want to look at how I benchmark against the industries that I'm losing out to with talent. So be that pharmaceutical, health, mobile health, tech health, because those industries need the same skills that we're all after. And so that's where this becomes interesting, because then we can take it cross-industry as well.
And obviously we talked about the telco industry specifically. Careful how I phrase this. How badly is telco doing compared to other industries?
Yeah, I think you had a slide up earlier, but we consistently lag against other industries. We're usually, if you have 10 industries, we're usually number 7 or number 8 when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're quite bad. And again, that's another reason why we need this. If you look at, we're at the Tech and AI Summit and meeting right now. And what we're all pulling on is the same talent. We're pulling on data scientists, on software skills. We're pulling on those capabilities that actually other industries are pulling on as well. And so if we continue to be in the bottom of the list, tech and telecom in particular, then like I said, talent war is going to be pretty intense when and if they start really driving, that pull towards them, which they're doing as we speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And Keri, as a CEO, what specifically do you need to do? And then same question to you, Vicky. What do you need to do?
I think there's a couple things that I need to do. One is, as a CEO of a company, we have to look at this as a strategic imperative. I think for too long it's been looked at as a moral objective. This is not a moral objective. This is strategic to our companies to drive the profitability, to drive the innovation, to drive the resilience that's going to be required. We just went through a massive pandemic. We're still going through a pandemic. Pandemics require resilience. Resilience is created when you have a diverse employee group. And so for that matter, we need this. For the other matter, which is driving innovation and ensuring that we actually are building the platform for the digital economy for the future, we will have to do this. So we have to embrace the benchmark. We have to start building it in as a metric like other KPIs around our business, watching it as a benchmark on a monthly basis in our operational reviews, and then building some viral competition in a positive way to try to enable others across the industry to understand the value that it's going to bring.
Yeah, and from my side, I mean, we can fight over the talent later. I guess for me, it's about kind of going out to the rest of the industry, continuing to do what I'm doing to get other CEOs like Keri on board so that we can drive this out as a standard. Also building partnerships, of which we're working with some already. So the likes of EcoVadis, who are the ratings experts, and they're getting them to take it on board. We're also partnered with the GLF, the Global Leadership Forum. So kind of just bringing everybody together, the collaboration that needs to go on. We are all in this together. One thing I've learned, and I've been doing diversity, inclusion and equality for about the last 14 years. And when it comes to this, then it really is what I said, competition goes out the window. Let's learn together. Let's get those best practices, share those best practices. And I encourage all of you to kind of learn how to become part of this so that we can do what Keri said and make this industry one of the most diverse and equal.
That's interesting because you said there, for instance, we're all in this together, and that's something that has been said over the last 18 months or so about the pandemic, for instance. But what impact has the pandemic actually had on this?
Well, it's had dire consequences, unfortunately. McKinsey just put out a study, and these are some of the statistics that came out of it. If you look at what's happening right now, we're actually losing diverse talent rather than attracting it. If you look between just the easiest one, again, gender, men and women, it's put a massive toll in what we're calling the double shift. Women are now working on average 20 more hours a week because they're working from home and they're having to deal with their children as well as their jobs. And so because of that, they're actually downshifting their careers more than men, and they're actually leaving the workforce. And I think that's going to continue to happen unless we start making it possible for them to be successful in their careers. And this is just women. Again, this is the easiest statistic to pull. I know, Vicky, you have some statistics about the disability area, but I also have them about LGBTQ+, and around ethnic and race. And ethnic and race are extremely concerned right now about health concerns coming back into the office. And that's making it very hard for them to think about trying to look at that promotion in their career. And when you look at LGBTQ+, it's been a big burden to not be a part of the social networks and the employee resource groups, to have that community of similar mind around them. And so Vicky, I know you have some statistics on disability as well.
Yeah, because obviously that's one of the other things that we've been looking at, and the Office of National Statistics released some figures that between July to November last year, 22.1 out of every 1,000 that were made redundant were those with a disability, versus 13 per 1,000 of those without a disability. And so, you know, they're fearing for their future, for their livelihoods. And also, I think what the pandemic has done is, you know, when looking at, you know, cutbacks and all that kind of things, so making those, you know, reasonable adjustments for those that need a certain accessibility when coming back to the office, that's one of the things that may well get cut. And when we look at the future talent that we need, and some of those stats as well, so 77% of CEOs recognize that one of their biggest threats is the lack of skills that they can get. So we need to look at all of these diverse groups and actually support them. So the pandemic really hasn't helped, and actually it's just on the gender stat as well. It's women are 1.5 more times to have suffered mental health issues, and 1.4 times, you know, worried about the connectivity and the sociability that Keri just spoke to. So it's, you know, there's quite a lot of damage there, and organisations now need to reimagine and rethink and not put diversity, inclusion and equality on the back burner. This is not a nice to have. It needs to be that business strategic imperative to make this industry remain sustainable and relevant across, you know, beyond the next 5 years, beyond the next 10 years.
And I think, just to add to that real quick, I mean, you look at these statistics and go, well, I had a problem before, I have a worse problem now, I'm not going to concentrate on this. I think that's absolutely the wrong thing to do. We can't use COVID as an excuse to not actually put in place the elements that are necessary in order to drive the future skills of our industry forward.
Okay, I'm going to try and speed things up a little bit here because we've had a lot of questions come through, and I want to make sure we can address some of those. But if somebody wants to get involved in this, how can they find out more information and what can they do?
Yeah, I mean, by all means, please do get in touch. We want you to get in touch. Right now, where we are is we have run a pilot of the IDS score. Wave 2 is happening from end of October, early November with 15 other companies. And then we're planning on a full launch from early next year. So I would love every organisation here to get involved in that. So please reach out to me through the tmforum.org website, and go to Human Factory and be able to contact me, or I can give you my details after this. And also, you know, go back and talk to your executive teams. Get your CEO involved in this. They need to understand it, and we've already said they do get it, but actually they need to be involved and they need to advocate for this. So I'd welcome, you know, everybody coming and doing that.
Okay, all right, let's jump into some of these questions then. So to begin with, does the location of a company affect their ability to become more diverse and inclusive in their recruitment? And if so, will the hybrid workplace help? Keri.
So yes, it does. It absolutely has an impact, and that's one of the reasons why we created the ability to be adaptable per geography in the IDS score, because every single region of the world is in a different place and a different starting point when it comes to DE&I. Some are, you know, in the negative position, and some of them are a little bit more positive. So we do take that into consideration into the score. And absolutely, I do think hybrid working opens up a completely different landscape for the way that we can attract and the way that we can enable more workers across the world to be successful and participate in the digital economy.
Okay, and a question for you, Vicky. Do you think that enough is done to help women or people with disabilities get into the tech industry in the first place?
I mean, we can do more, and I think, you know, organisations and actually us as individuals as well, is, you know, we need to find out what their needs are, and also make sure that our organisations are running programmes like mentorship, going into universities, going into schools. You know, there's a lot of annual events that take place as well, and actually where to get, you know, specifically young girls, as that was brought up as part of the question, is, you know, they're starting to think about what they want to be when they're older, you know, from the age of 9. In fact, I've seen stats saying it's 4 and beyond. So that's really when we need to start showcasing the role models. You know, Keri is a role model, but there's also people that, you know, are through all different levels of the organisation. We need to start shouting about it. We need more allies. And when it comes to accessibility and disability, and there's a lot of visible ones and a lot of invisible ones, you know, we need to make sure that they're there as the role models as well, and that correct accessibility is there for them to be able to come in.
And I'll just add to that real quick, because I think that one of the aspects of inclusion is inclusive leadership, and that comes with an element of empathy. Yeah. And in order to enable empathy within your organization, you have to listen to your employees. That's the number one thing that you have to do. So in order to enable more women, more of the diverse workforce to come in, first thing that we have to do as executives in our companies is listen to what our employees need from us in order to enable them to be successful.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, but I've got dozens of questions here that I could have asked you. Clearly, it's a hot topic and a popular one with the audience. Obviously, if anyone does have any questions, you can network and connect with Keri and Vicky directly through the app, and I'm sure they'll be willing to address any questions you might have. But for now, please say thank you to Vicky and to Keri.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.